right. Yeah. As Adam said, like it's a very hot topic right now. As like Vitalik talked about it as well. Like, should certain things be enshrined into the Ethereum protocol in particular? So I'm really excited for the discussion with like different perspectives and seeing what everyone thinks and how something like this could look like and what it would mean also for the industry or for Ethereum in particular. We have with us Konstantin, who's like the founder of Cyberfund and also like early co-founder from P2P and Lido. We have Robert, economist at 1KX. Michael is here at Fantom, who already have like liquid staking on the protocol level. And Daniel, like who's working very close with like many protocols and foundations. So also an interesting perspective. And I just want to open the round here for like everyone maybe to say like in very quick, like 1 minute. Do you think liquid staking will be enshrined in some form or another in the coming years? Maybe you can start, yeah.
Yeah, of course it will be, you know, like, I mean, I think that the main objective of any like protocol developers is to make the protocol more secure. And if you can add more security by enshrining some piece of their like liquid staking to the protocol, I mean, it will definitely will happen, you know, like, and I think it's good, yeah.
All right. Robert?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a good chance that it will happen. I mean, we're not going to incorporate Lido right away, I guess. We'll need to explore ways to level the playing field, right? Deal with, you know, the worst consequences of, you know, centralization tendencies that we see. And yeah, does that mean we're going to see like a native Ethereum LST? Unfortunately, these days, right, the exploration of the design space, and then it's not just about what makes the most sense, but then you also need to watch a little bit about what regulators might do and these consequences. So that's why I see also some probability that we are actually not going to have it enshrined.
Yeah, I think there eventually will be to some extent, but I don't think like anytime soon, meaning like a year or two away, because I think there's a lot of like issues and problems that potentially need to be resolved, or you would have like liquid staking enshrined in any particular like L1 protocol. But I think these problems can be discussed and kind of like overcome via, you know, gamification and just like problem solving in general. So I think maybe over the next 5 or so years eventually will be, but not like anytime soon.
I do think liquid staking will be, it's inevitable they'll be enshrined. I think liquid staking are like kingmakers, especially from the validator perspective, and validators will basically do whatever they want. Whatever liquid staking or the largest liquid staking protocol will want them to do to comply. And eventually I think like the direction that staking is moving into, institutions preferring native asset staking and retail more preferring more liquid assets, is going to continue to do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great perspective. And maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into like why should liquid staking be enshrined into the protocol? Robert, maybe you can take it a little bit from the economic perspective as well.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do so. I mean, the obvious reason is risk. I mean, security is a public good. And you don't want to fully leave that out to the market forces to figure that out, especially when the underlying economical dynamics are inherently centralizing, right? Any proof of stake, staking reward scheme, you know, there are countless papers where you see it will lead to centralization. And yeah, the risk, right? We have different forms that we're talking here. There's obviously operational risk. What if, you know, the node operators of this big stakeholder go offline, or even worse, you know, if there's smart contract issues that all of a sudden affect a big chunk of your network. There's a whole consensus-related risk, the trust-related issues. If a stakeholder has like more than 33%, 51%, more than 66%, I mean, right? God knows even the MEV-related shenanigans that might come up, and then. Also, I think one of the most important parts triggering this discussion also the governance related risks, where you start asking the question, okay, who decides the course of the network, right? It used to be a given that the trade-offs in the blockchain dilemma are just set by the protocol, and the user just pick the L1 that fulfills so. But yeah, we can probably spend hours to go through the risk and the spectrum and how to counter those. But enshrining the LST to some extent is for sure part of a tool set you can encounter those risks. So what exactly, to which extent, it's a very good discussion to have. And yeah, also let's not forget, it's an important discussion to have also beyond Ethereum, because there's lots of staking-based networks out there, and they all face similar dynamics, yet different scale, but yeah, we should have that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about like who would make a decision of enshrinement and like how would that actually happen. But also like there's still like a lot of counter arguments around like enshrining a total, like you mentioned the risks and so on. What do you think, Konstantin, like from your perspective, why should we like not enshrine liquid staking into the protocol?
First of all, I want to discuss what we mean here when we say enshrining, because it is an acquisition, when, for example, the protocol can acquire some type of the protocol. And it is, what I mean when I say enshrining, I mean that it is a new features in a protocol that are, introduced, on protocol level and has some function of, for example, liquid staking. And if we speak about this topic, first of all, I'm not, I think that it's good, where protocols are, first of all, I mean, protocol developers, what they want to achieve, they want to build a platform that is decentralized and secure, censorship resistant. And for that, they're designing some type of staking mechanics, and when we see on a staking market, it is a lot of different solutions, they work in different way, and for now, I don't think that, for example, liquid staking is introduce any risk for Ethereum. If you will look how Ethereum works, in general, even if one of the liquid staking solutions will have 80%, stake, and it will try to attack Ethereum, nothing will happen, And the second, but still, where is an opportunity here that you can make. I mean, first of all, it is two different. First of all, you need to understand what part of liquid staking you want to enshrine. Because, for example, Ethereum can't enshrine governance, and without governance, you can only add some piece of the logic, and that will make, how to say, more secure liquid staking also for liquid staking protocols. So even if Ethereum enshrines this piece of the logic, you still need some DAOs who will be opinionated to choose a validator set. And I think that this piece of work still should make, someone should make it, Why? Because Ethereum, vision is not to have governance inside of the protocol. And if you look on a Cosmos, for example, blockchain, as another example, there you have a governance, everybody here, participate in it, I think we even can collect quorum here. And so when we speak about the governance of Cosmos, they already do this governance. And it means that they can enshrine full liquid staking inside. And they will make it more secure. Why? Because token holders of Atom, they more aligned with the vision of Atom and who will be the validators, and they can design type of the logic. And the second point that when you enshrine in something, I think Vitalik did a pretty good job describing it. You should be sure that this logic is mature enough, that you don't introduce additional risk, because when something new like liquid staking happen, you can build it from day one, because it will introduce more risk than a solution. And especially in the case of Cosmos, you can be more flexible, you can upgrade it faster. In case of Ethereum, it's much more difficult to upgrade the tech. And so what I want to say that enshrining of the logic to make protocol secure is natural, and it's great, and it will happen. And I hope it will happen on the Ethereum side, but I think what they should look like that it's also work well with liquid staking protocols, many of them, you know, great one like Rocket Pool, like Lido, like others, you know. And why? Because what the objective is to make it more secure. And if they want to make it more secure and decentralized, that means they introduce some features in protocol level that all these protocols need. For example, the most needed thing is like triggered withdrawals, you know, like in Ethereum. And then they can do for liquid staking some, even like enshrine some part of the liquid staking inside. And so what in the conclusion, I want to say that it's inevitable. We will have it. The question is, what is our, I mean, when, you know, like, and how, and when it will be in your, you know, like roadmap. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the interesting part is that a lot of the protocols and Ethereum as well have been designed like on a theoretical basis from like, tokenomic experts and like people who really thought about it, but just from a theoretical perspective. And then it always looks completely different when you launch a network and then you see everything playing in action. And then obviously it's a matter of time until things like get optimized and you make the protocol more efficient and effective. So it does make sense to like, maybe take a modular approach to it and maybe enshrine certain things of the liquid staking into it first. And I'm curious for you, Michael, so you launched like Fantom with like liquid staking already inherited into the protocol. What are your learnings from it and like how was your, like how is it playing out right now from like what you initially thought and how it's playing out now?
Well, Fantom wasn't actually launched with like liquid staking like already enshrined in it. So like when we launched like the Fantom Foundation Network, which was at the end of 2019, it was basically just in terms of like proof of stake, pretty much just like a standard vanilla like proof of stake implementation, right? You know, you have validators that validate transactions. You need just over 2/3 of transaction of the total validating power required in order to validate a transaction on network or to include it as a finalized transaction in a finalized block. And you know, you had people who could delegate to nodes, and those people could basically like stake on your behalf, and they would earn some of the earnings, 15%, and you would earn the over 85%. But there wasn't any liquid staking per se in that you got like another like token out of it until actually a bit later that we experimented a bit with. So we created our own like liquid staking token called SFTM, which was basically a very simple like, I guess like Lido-based implementation where you would stake your FTM, you get issued this SFTM token, and then you could use that to trade around and participate in DeFi and that sort of thing. And then we sort of like didn't really support that much going forward because it didn't really make sense for us as a foundation to kind of like implementing like our own liquid staking solution. We wanted like people from the community and other projects to come on Fantom and do that. And we had a few projects that ended up doing that. For example, like Stata. But the problem that we experienced with liquid staking is very much a similar problem to what like other networks have experienced as well, especially like Ethereum, right? In that, how do you minimize like risk? How do you make sure that the liquid staking protocol doesn't become like too centralized or gain too much traction, which adds to potential centralization risks? How do you make sure that there's like enough liquidity for people to be able to transact safely with the liquid stake token, knowing that they can redeem it for the underlying token as well? And these are all problems that, to be honest, we haven't really like solved at Fantom, and we haven't like focused too much of our time at it at the Fantom Foundation. That being said, we have had a bunch of like discussions continuously ever since we've learned from our own experiences to do with liquid staking, and we actually are thinking about like, okay, how can we solve some of these problems that we know exist like on Fantom with regards to liquid staking, which are pretty much the same concepts that exist on like other chains, and is it possible for governance to basically like enshrine liquid staking out in the protocol and reintroduce some sort of like liquid staking token that's sort of like native to the Fantom ecosystem like we did like earlier on. But there's a few other things that we want to focus on beforehand before we do that, which is one of them is kind of like revitalizing the DeFi ecosystem on Fantom, I think it's vital that you have a thriving DeFi ecosystem which requires a number of components for it, for liquid staking to be really worth it. And that's sort of what we're like focused on like at the moment. So the lessons learned are pretty much, we have the same, economic security problems as any other proof of stake trying to implement liquid staking. So I think we're all just trying to solve the same problems in the end.
Awesome. Yeah, and then for Fantom, I think it was like you were still like quite early when you adopted the liquid staking. I guess there were no like third-party liquid staking protocols in the network yet. And now we are like for Ethereum, for example, it's going to be interesting because there is like many different liquid staking protocols from third parties already in the market and already have a lot of traction. So it would probably look even a little bit different. And I'm curious, Daniel, from your perspective, like what do you think, what can LST protocols do to position themselves for potential enshrinement?
Yeah, I guess I'm still undecided on whether or not like if enshrinement was right in its totality good or bad, and as Konstantin was saying, maybe it's like feature-based or modular. But again, what Konstantin said, I think it all does come down to how applicable that type of governance injection is to the liquid staking. I remember when Vasily had posted his rationale, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, I think it was last year, where he was basically taking the stance, I think, like Lido should not, like a large liquid staking protocol like Lido should not purposefully self-limit because it obviously would hinder the type of sort of iron sharpening iron or capable competitors to kind of come in and take charge. But I think an interesting, I guess, kind of analogy to what we've been seeing within these, like, especially on Ethereum, these third-party liquid staking protocols that do compete with each other, right? We want to enable this sort of like trustless or permissionless, and also a structure that does engage in censorship resistance, which is not hopefully centralized and is like the final word to compete. But then, with sort of like the theory of this type of capitalism is like there eventually will be a monopoly, because as people compete, people die off or don't do as well, and then sort of the spoils go to the winner, which obviously has happened with Lido to some extent. But then, there is no sort of like centralized government with like what happens in countries like the United States, where the government comes in and says, "Hey, Microsoft, you have to break up," or like you have to like split up into these things because you're too big and you're hindering that type of competition. But that also does come to like this governance perspective. And if you are, to answer your question, a liquid staking protocol that does want to engage and then wants to like kind of climb up that hill and kind of exercise your strong opinions on how liquid staking should be, if it's not just like a money grab, then it is like what type of governance you do have on chain, right? If we were to compare like a non-on-chain governance ecosystem like Ethereum and then a on-chain governance ecosystem like Cosmos, you have like a variety of like pain points that you're going to have to deal with, right? On one end, you might have like tyranny of the majority that you have with on-chain governance. On the other, you have like tyranny of the devs, right? Like Ethereum core devs that do get to decide like what does get pushed is going to be what becomes law. And it is like, in fact, this type of lobbying effort that has to happen, and what community you are satisfied with. And I think the Ethereum community is mature enough to have like kind of obviously a lot of these conversations and debates that have been happening online or even behind closed doors is, right, are they happy with who the kings are of liquid staking on chain? And it was clearly like the people who had, I don't know if it was a vocal minority or it was a vocal majority, but they were clearly displeased with the state of like liquid staking, right? Like on Ethereum at least. And they made their case, and then now we have like other liquid staking protocols that tried to do what they needed. But right, Ethereum has had, to go back to it, Ethereum has had this history of relying on social consensus, which was a form of governance, which is also prone to that type of tyranny that you also see on on-chain governance. But they were able to implement that into what we all know as like the DAO fork, right? Like that code was not law, and that type of enshrinement that is going to kind of determine that type of what law is or what type of code is run specifically on your sort of like security model, which in this case, since it's not POW, it is all like this type of game theoretic security, which needs to have this type of competitive advantage. So the TLDR is like there should be an understanding of what the network is capable of handling from who decides what happens, right? Like if we had a Vitalik on an on-chain like governance chain, then they would decide, right? Like but then we have also Ethereum with its whole law of subtraction, and then taking a step back, where hopefully like some of the technical folks are able to consider. But again, institutions are going to decide because they hold the preference in capital for native assets, while I think the retail ecosystem has a preference for that liquidity to easily go in and out of.
So do you think the third-party liquid staking, the competitive advantage over enshrined liquid staking would be basically to have on-chain or like have governance components as well? Because you also mentioned like it's probably like the governance part wouldn't be enshrined.
Are we going? Yeah, I think so. I think it's almost as if like if there was so much preference for liquidity of an asset, then maybe it should have been there from the get-go by default. And then whatever governance does get to decide how the protocol changes is going to decide that. So Ethereum, it's a small minority of developers that do get to decide, and then on other chains you have more representative, hopefully.
Awesome. Yeah. So and then maybe like as a last step, we can dive a little bit into like how would potential enshrinement look like? I think you mentioned, maybe like in the direction of an acquisition of some sorts. How do you think like this would play out in the end if something like this happens, like modularly over time?
Yeah, first of all, we need to split, like our discussion on networks that has governance and that doesn't have, because it's different cases. In case of Ethereum, I don't think that it's possible to acquire something. Why? Because the solutions are really complex, and it's really like, and also, like from Ethereum side, they have a lot of features that they can develop, and how I see the future, first of all, I mean, they need to make competition better, because now, like LiDAR and other protocols, like who on top, it's difficult to compete with them because it's a lot of trust to them, But they are, and also competitors, for them it's really difficult to build a trustless protocol. Why? Because it doesn't have features like triggable withdrawals, And when you look that you want enshrine liquid staking, for example, for Ethereum, you need to look on your backlog of features, what you need to do first. And when you will look on them, it is, how to say, low-hanging fruits that is much more simple that are enshrining liquid staking that you can develop and you will have a better security. And the second, when you will start to work with liquid staking, it's clear that current, design with 32 ETH is not optimal. Why? Because if you look on our distribution, who are staking, they are not owners almost. I mean, it is also a lot of validators, like professional validators. They are not owners of the stake. And it means that it's designed, it still works, it's still secure, it's still, I don't think that it is any issues for Ethereum. But the question, when you will start to work on these particular things. And also I think that liquid staking protocols, they also experiment a lot and show the best design. For example, LiDAR liquid staking is working on dual governance. And dual governance is making from staked ETH, it's like almost native protocol. Why? Because if you can block any proposal and quit, it means if you trust the smart contracts, it's almost permissionless. It can be built in this way, and this is also like like a design that can win. Like if you can build such type of design that is secure for staked Ethereum, and they can quit on any proposal that they don't like. That means that, like maybe you don't need to spend time on it, like maybe the design of different liquid staking protocols will come to, and what Ethereum community, they need to push. It is like a community. They need to attack LIDA and others, like to make it better. And this is great, like it's one of the biggest value of Ethereum and Ethereum communities that they react on that, like and push protocols to be better. And from Cosmos networks and other, they have a much different story. Why? Because they have this governance, and from one side you need to build a permissionless, like staking. From other side, you can define some metrics or like formula, like how you will choose these validators to optimize the validator set. And I think that Cosmos will be like in front of it. And if you speak about acquisition, for Cosmos, it's much more easy, like to acquire. But it's still, like in any type of acquisition, especially on-chain acquisition, this is independent topic, how to make it really well. It's really not clear how to understand the valuation of the protocol, like for example, they develop something, like what is the price of acquisition? Because you can pump a token and say, oh, give me $1 billion, but it's not the price, but how to evaluate, like it. But if it's a healthy evaluation, for example, they developed a best liquid staking for Cosmos, and it's, I don't know, like $5 million price, it's lower that the Cosmos team will spend on it. That is beneficial for everyone, like, and I think that it's a big opportunity for networks try to find a way how they acquire like the startups, like, and be stronger.
Yeah, I think in that sense, it's really interesting that all the different LST protocols have different approaches, and they're basically trying out like, yeah, what works, what doesn't work, how can we be complementary to like institutions and so on as well. So I think it's a great way, or like a great opportunity for Ethereum and others as well to figure out like, okay, what makes sense and like what should we adopt and what not, because there's already a playing field in production, which is pretty amazing, I think. And I wonder, Mike, maybe from your side, do you see any like potential risks? Because Robert, you mentioned like one of the risks would be also like regulation for like enshrinement. Do you see any risks there for like institutions investing into protocols? Is that a risk with like enshrined liquid staking?
Yeah, I think like the big trade-off when it comes to enshrinement of any liquid staking protocol is like security, right? And it's often like being quite talked about. So, what is the benefit of liquid staking? Fundamentally, it's the fact that, you can earn a yield participating in the validation or security of the network while also having the ability to, trade such an asset or engage in another aspect of a network, right? So that really is the benefit. And I think everyone like agrees that, this is why like people are very much interested in liquid staking, why we're talking about it today. But the downside about it is really risk, because if you have a token that's tradable, right, on the network, then you have an issue about like, okay, well, what about like the nothing at stake problem, right, where people are not able to get sufficiently slashed if they don't behave like appropriately on the network, and therefore there's no punishment or penalty for you trying to fork the network or do something dodgy with the consensus mechanism, right? And Vitalik, like in his article, as like Daniel mentioned, kind of like commented a bit about this in the past, where he said, well, we already have like a lot of like security on Ethereum. Does it really need to be 51%? Can it be like some like portion that's lower and more focused on the person who's actually running the node rather than people who delegate into the node? I mean, that is like a potential solution in terms of like, okay, this is how we, launch liquid staking and we still, maintain a degree of security. But fundamentally, what Vitalik was talking about, in my opinion, is still a trade-off between security, because you're going from 51% to at least some point lower. And I think it's a question of like, is that acceptable, right? He argued that potentially it is, because there is enough, it costs so much already to try and attack the network that even having a fraction of that still makes the network very secure. And so I don't really know like the answer. But I think there's like a lot more discussions that have been made.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, I think we could probably continue forever. It's a really interesting discussion to have. We're unfortunately running out of time, so just gonna wrap this up. I think like it's really great to have these kinds of discussions also like across different ecosystems. That's what I'm really excited about, because in the end we all want to like work to like make like blockchain infrastructure more efficient, and there's a lot of different approaches to it, and I think it's great to have all the different perspectives from all sorts of companies and contributors and so on. And I'm really looking forward to also continue these discussions over the coming months and years. And very excited to see where we are going in the space.
Thank you, Mirko, for organizing.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, everyone.